Welcome to the Building Resiliency Podcast. I'm your host, Todd Miner, and here with me is my wife, Mia Miner. We want to welcome you to our podcast tonight. We have the slide deck up, so we'll just kind of go through those. Why are we coming together? We realize the need to foster resiliency in our community, emphasizing families that support our young people and parents who are the true strength of our community. We also want to discuss ways to build resiliency in the face of daily challenges we and our families face. We also want to discuss resources that may be available to help in the community. Here's a background on our foundation. We won't read it all. We'll just leave it up a little bit so you can see it. I think high level, Mia, I don't know if you want to read a couple of those bullets there.
The background of our the Matthew E. Miner Awareness Foundation. Todd and I are the co-founders and advocates for online child safety. We are a 501c nonprofit organization created after our son passing in 2019, and are committed to bringing awareness about cyberbullying and the challenges that are online, knockout challenges and blackout challenges. Our son passed when he was 12, Matthew, to the foundation's namesake to these online challenges. And it inspired to provide help for families coping with grief and the loss of losing a loved one unexpectedly. We do have a scholarship fund for DMV college-bound students in the DC, Maryland, and Virginia areas, and to further their future education. And we are based here in Arkeek, Maryland.
No, that's good, man. Thank you. And
you're welcome.
So we'll continue with our updates, but we always like to start with this quote that we had written in the Baltimore Sun some months ago. But for us, it's a campaign born from the deepest loss, driven by the love and memory of a young boy who always worked hard to protect others. So we'll go over our updates real quick. As far as COSA, on September 18th, the COSA passed through the House and Energy Commerce Committee. Now we need to get it to a House floor vote. As you guys have been following us, we want the strongest version of the bill possible, and we're almost there. If COSA is not passed, youth will continue to be mortally harmed by social media. And we ask you to continue to contact our elected officials and let them know we want COSA passed this year. And if you're following us on Facebook, we actually put some links up where we partner with Parents Together. They have a link. If you click on it, and once you put your zip code in, it will automatically create letters for your elected officials. You just fill out all your information, put in your zip code, and just go through a couple drop downs, hit submit, and it'll send it to all your elected officials in your district, your senator, and your House of Representatives. So if you go to our website and find out, you can find out more about that. Go to our Facebook page, or you can send us a direct message and we'll send you the link directly. Also, our Memorial Scholarship is now accepting college scholarship applications nationwide, because our last update said it was DC, Maryland, Virginia, but now we're nationwide. So any youth, any young people in America can apply for it. Our goal this year is to award 8 scholarships for the year. And with your help, we will definitely be able to do it. To make a donation or find out more about our scholarship, there's the link, and we've included that. So thank you so much. Here's just a screenshot of what it looks like. Our scholarship looks like on bold.org. So that way you know you found the right one if you want to apply or donate to our scholarship fund. We're just going to go over what is resiliency. Resiliency, the capacity to withstand, to recover quickly from difficulties, toughness, the ability of a substance or object to spring back into shape, elasticity, And then we're also open to hear what you'd like to discuss at our next webinar. So just you can put the information in the chat or in the comments, and we'll respond back to you. Our guest tonight is Erich, and forgive me, Erich, I didn't know how to pronounce your last name, so we'll make sure we get that straight when we bring him in. But educate, train, support, and advocate. And I'll bring you on now, Erich. And hi, Erich. And how do you say your last name, Erich?
Mische. So it rhymes.
Mische. Okay.
With squishy
Sure.
and fishy and ishy and any of the ishies. So
okay. And so I'm just going to go over this high level here for you about your foundation. In August 1989, 6 Minneapolis couples joined together with a common cause. Each had lost a child to suicide. Together, they created SAVE to educate the public about suicide prevention and to serve as a resource and voice for suicide loss survivors. Now, for nearly 35 years, SAVE has been leading national organization to prevent suicide. And I just got these off the website or off your high level. These are your focuses. Erich, you let me know if these are proper. If not, then I can just take it down. And with that, Erich Mische, I'm sorry, Mische. We want to welcome you, and we just thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Well, thank you, and thank you for the work that you all do, and the commitment that you've made to kind of carrying forward your son and everything about him and who he is and who he represents to people. The important work that you're doing, raising awareness and making sure that people understand the many facets around suicide and suicide prevention. In order for us to make an impact in changing the trajectory here, we all have to be able to work together, and we're delighted to be able to be here today chatting with you about our work and your work and how we can all work together, make an impact.
Yeah. Thank you. And
Thank you.
yeah, so I guess, Erich, as we talk about resiliency a lot in our podcast and everything, and I saw kind of in the introduction that the parents came together to create SAVE. How, at least in our work, it seems helping others has helped. Do you feel that that's been the case for your, for your organization as well?
Yeah, one of the things, so before I became the CEO of SAVE, I had the privilege to lead 2 other nonprofit organizations. And, one of the things that I've learned about the nonprofit world is that a lot of the organizations that are created come about because of some life experience the founders have had, right? So, whether it's a tragedy or it's some kind of opportunity, but the things that create most nonprofits in this country come about because of somebody's life experience that they've had with something, right? And so the Matthew E. Minor Awareness Foundation, right, came together because of something that was impactful, personal, and tragic in your lives, and is trying to find a way to try to address that grief and that tragedy, make sense of it, to help others, to raise awareness, to make a difference in the world. And so SAVE isn't any different, right? When it was created by folks that were trying to figure out what they could do to help make a difference in the world. It was for them to try to understand how could they process their own grief and loss in a way that they felt could help others. And 35 years later, that commitment and that vision continues to inform the work that we're doing.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So I went to your website, and actually I think you just kind of get a taste of what it is that you guys do. I don't know. Was that slide pretty good for me to have up, or did you kind of want to give us a high level of or maybe an overview of what your foundation does? Because I
think there was
4 pillars.
let me talk about the 4 pillars. I think that's a good way to, I literally just got done. We've had a 2-day staff retreat, kind of going through our kind of 2024, kind of, looking at the back, kind of how did the year go, and then setting our goals and objectives for 2025 that are all really informed by what we call our 4 pillars: education, training, advocacy, and support for suicide loss survivors. And so as you look at the work that we do, we try to make sure that anything that we're involved with tries to touch in some way, shape, or form every one of those 4 pillars. So, for example, we're very involved in issues surrounding advocacy on lethal means safety issues. How can we talk and raise awareness about the need to make your home environment safe, where you may have situations where someone could be at risk of suicide or suicidal ideation? Making sure that you're practicing safe gun storage techniques, right? That you're putting cable locks on triggers, and that if you have prescription drugs or other kinds of drugs in the household, that you put them in a lockbox so that they're safely stored. That's the kind of thing you would do even if you just got kids around the house, right? But even as we think about trying to make a home environment safe for somebody who may be struggling, with suicidal thoughts and suicidal ideation, somebody who may be a recent attempt survivor, what can we do to kind of communicate, raise awareness, and promote public policies that address those kind of issues? We've been very actively involved in trying to get suicide prevention barriers on a public structure here in Minnesota. That's an issue that we're working with folks across the country who are also involved in how do you address the issue of making public structures safe, so that you don't have very preventable suicides taking place on tall public structures. So that's kind of an example of advocacy, but so too is the work we've been working with you all on, which is trying to pass the Kids Online Safety Act, right?
Oh, yeah.
How can we get involved and advocate in public policy space to make young people's digital experience safer? How do we hold the companies that build these products accountable for what they put into the marketplace, so that if there are harm created, that there's a way to remedy those harms, right? So those are some of the advocacy. Training, right? We work closely with folks in the construction industry to develop a training program, because construction industry, typically is the number 1 or number 2 profession for suicide, really across the world. Wow. And so, we also have a program that we have developed that we're implementing. I think we're in about almost 100 college campuses across the country right now, called the Green Bandana Project, which is intended to provide tools to college students so they can be trusted allies and advocates and peers for their fellow students who might be experiencing a mental health crisis or a suicidal ideation crisis. Not to be counselors, not to be therapists, but to be available to say, let me work with you and help you get you to the resources that the campus community has, so we can help you, right? Education is this is education, right? The conversation we're having today, right, is talking about suicide, talking about the risks that are involved in things like social media access for kids and stuff like that. And then the support for suicide loss survivors, which, it's something as basic as somebody reaching out to us and saying, I need some information about how to process this trauma in my life, right? And so sending out a packet of information about suicide loss and what do you do and how do you process it? What are some of the issues you got to look at? So everything we do, again, really our goal is that anything we do touches on at least, some part of each of those pillars. Ultimately, again, the goal here is to educate the public, make people aware, and do what we can to be partnering with other groups and organizations to help save lives and by preventing suicide.
No, that's really good. And one thing I did want to ask, and I just if you come across a family and maybe they had a loss that was tied to suicide, do you interact with them after something, something like that happens, a tragedy, or?
We do from time to time. I mean, it really kind of depends on what a family may need, right? We have families that reach out to us who simply want to know, is there a support group somewhere close to them, right?
Right.
We have families that reach out to us and say, can you send us information so we can understand more about kind of what happens next, if you will, right? So I think there's a wide variety of reasons why a family might reach out to us. Okay. So I think it varies. It varies for, family to family and what they're looking for, what they may think they need. And I will tell you, a lot of times families who are suicide loss survivors oftentimes don't know what it is that they do need.
Yeah, I mean, not that Matthew passed from suicide, but I know even for us, you don't know what you don't know. And so then you're just kind of, yeah. And that's really the reason why I asked, because even for us, until we got with some of the other parents and the other groups and support groups, like you had mentioned and stuff, once we got kind of tied in, then we were able to kind of figure some things out. Maybe, like you said, try to, you may not ever understand 100%, but at least you can have a general sense of maybe what was going on, why these type of things would occur, and that kind of thing. And it does. And then also probably from reaching out and stuff, you get individuals that would continue to support, because you've shared information that helped them or helped the community, then they'll probably want to come back. And that was the same for us. We, it just pulled us in. We're like, wow, your family all around, everybody means well, but you're not getting that specific information you may need to kind of help you get through your day to day. And I've gone through a lot of things. And so I know about that day to day, from, that's just kind of number one for any kind of therapy type thing, get through that one day and then get through another and that kind of thing. And so I'm just glad to know about this and about your organization. And I think you said you're based out of is it Minnesota or? Yep.
So our headquarters is in Bloomington, Minnesota, which is a suburb of Minneapolis. I'm looking out my office window, and I don't know what the weather's like in your neck of the woods, but it's dreary and drizzly, and it feels like winter is just getting ready to jump on us. But I'm hoping we got a few more days before that happens. And we work really across the country, and we work with a lot of different organizations, and obviously, again, Kids Online Safety Act. We've worked with a lot of the folks that are part of that very large coalition. I had the privilege to meet you, Todd, in Washington, D.C., the evening of the day that the Senate passed the Kids Online Safety Act, and was able to kind of hang out with folks who've been working on this really for the last couple of years. And, one of the things that we know is that, the challenge we face today with suicide in this country is that there's a lot of good organizations out there doing a lot of really important good work, and yet we still see the numbers can at times be very discouraging, right? Because and particularly as you look at the data points and the data sets that are related to young kids, particularly preteen kids, right? The National Institute for Mental Health released a report not long ago that talks about a very alarming increase in suicidal ideation among young preteen kids, particularly, kids of color and young girls. And we need to understand that all of us have got to figure out ways to work together and amplify the voices of people that are out there doing this work, if we're going to have any hope of making a meaningful impact and dent in those numbers.
Wow. Yeah, that's it. Did you have a question, Mia? I thought you said.
Well, we are advocating Kids Online Safety Act, and we just mentioned it earlier. Do you find an elevation in your statistics as far as suicide with the online social media usage in your statistics now?
Here's what I would tell you. It's interesting. I think the CDC has just recently issued its first report where they finally have acknowledged the correlation between the amount of time that kids spend online and the impact on mental health. And again, you can't divorce the association between kids' decline in mental health because of the amount of time they spend on social media away from the fact that we're seeing increases in suicidal ideation and suicide. If you talk to parents together, right, who have lost children to suicide, they don't need somebody to give them a statistic. They see it. They've lived it. Right? They see the end result of what's going on. This is the piece that I find both fascinating and frustrating. Right? There's this argument amongst folks who try to provide, this notion that, there's a lot of really good things that come from social media for kids, right? As though somehow or another, that's how we should start our sentence. I would argue that we should start our sentence by, there's a lot of bad things happening to kids on social media, and we got to deal with that before we start talking about the good things that happen on social media. Okay.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
That's what we keep being told by folks that want to be, whether you want to call them apologists, whether you want to call them the folks that try to justify why they continue to support the arguments by big tech that their products don't have any proof that they harm kids, right? I think we got to stop with this notion that we should somehow or another be almost apologetic and defensive by saying, yes, we know there's good things on social media. Excuse my French, the heck with that. I think we got to start out by saying, let's first talk about the dangers that it poses to kids online. And once we deal with that, then let's talk about all the great things that go on. Okay. We live in a world in which big tech has got a lot of money, right? They give a lot of money to a lot of groups and a lot of people and a lot of individuals. And there's a lot of folks out there that are, I would argue, too often carry the water for big tech because they're concerned that the impact that it may have on their fundraising and things like that, if they are critical of them. I wrote a piece a month or so ago, saying that we will no longer take money from big tech, that you can't, on one hand, talk about the dangers of their products, and on the other hand, say you're taking their money as though the ends justify the means, right? If you look at big tobacco, right? So I was a smoker for many, many years. So I started smoking when I was 12 years old in a little town in North Dakota called Fairmount, in the lobby of the post office, when my brother gave me a Salem cigarette and I lit it up. And so I kept smoking from that time for over 20 years.
Wow.
And I was addicted to that product. And those companies knew they were addicting people and kids like me. And they fought every effort to regulate those industries. They fought every effort to prove that their products were harming and killing people. And there's nothing different between what big tech is doing today than what big tobacco did for decades.
Yeah.
Yeah. We definitely agree with that because, and like you said,
Absolutely.
the Surgeon General's a lot that came from the Surgeon General as far as putting those warning labels on the social
Tobacco.
media, on applications and stuff. I mean, it's and they've gone unchecked for so long. I mean, they wanted it to grow. I understand kind of when it was fledgling, they were kind of held back on the regulations, Section 230 and that kind of stuff. But now it's like, no, you're big enough. Now we can kind of rein it in. You've
Right.
grown, you've now you're part of society, so to speak. Everybody's walking around with a phone in their pocket connected to social media of some sort. You can access.
Yeah.
I mean, so yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I actually remember when I was younger, I remember when it went from all those commercials on TV for the cigarettes and all that, and Winston Man, Salem Man, or whatever, all those guys, the cigarette and all that stuff. And then you started seeing less and less and less, over time. You started seeing less and stuff. Yeah, the commercials. So you could see that from my perspective, I didn't know everything going on, but I said, what happened to that commercial? I used to like it, because we kind of just acted out. I got a cigarette in my hand and stuff like that.
Right.
But we didn't know, we were young, but it had a nice song to it, nice little jingle or something like that, or Marlboro Man or something like that. And but children are young and impressionable, so whatever's kind of that going thing, and right now social media is that going thing. Yeah. And so we just we talked with a parent not long ago, and it wasn't actually on. This wasn't actually on social media, but it was a website specifically set up on how to take your own life, and all the different steps. I mean, you could, you select different, I guess, ways, and it would have the steps broken down for whichever way you were trying to do something. And I was just taken
back how all this ridiculous information is on, social media.
And that young people, because this individual was, kind of starting college, but they were still young. And, if you're impressionable, or like you said, if, some have something, something else going on, like them, and it just, something bad happened, maybe a breakup, those kind of things kind of precipitate those activities. And we're finding that more. Most of the time it's a breakup, or they were kind of kicked out of some kind of group, friendship group, and they're no longer accepted or something like that. And that kind of drives them into the thing of seeing what else is out there, that and kind of feel like, hey, I don't have it doesn't matter what happens to me.
Right.
And so, just like what we originally said, you don't know what you don't know, but that was what was amazing, that it's almost like walking through it. You have a house out in a field, or like a little cabin. It looks like a little cabin. Then you walk through the doors, and then, man, it's like the Taj Mahal inside, and you're like, wait a minute, I didn't realize the floodgates were just there. And so it's almost, what I like about what you said is, all we can do is we try to be there for those that need the help, and then we continue to advocate for those that we can reach. And so between those two ways, it's kind of like a net. Hopefully we'll be able to catch those. Because every time we're looking, we're seeing different names for the online challenges. We're like, what's that? And then we look, oh, they changed the name again? Okay. And then in 2 weeks or a month, they change it again. So, definitely applaud what your organization's doing, and to be around, for that length of time. Because for us, we've been around since 2019 when Matthew passed, but there's a lot of that low time when you're not, maybe in the media, or you may not, maybe you're not doing podcasts or websites and that kind of stuff. You're just, you're out there, you're talking, you're kind of trying to get known and stuff, but people are, you've dealt with it. You try to hand out the flyer, like, I don't want it, or they just walk by.
Yeah.
And so I think about that, and so that's why I kind of applaud, your organization's kind of stay in power, because it's not easy in this space to keep going. And I did want to ask that. I mean, that was kind of one of our resiliency questions. I mean, because you have a team, a staff, I guess, a group that you work with and stuff. How do you guys keep going? I mean, in those low times, I mean.
Yeah. I mean, it's, we talked about that again in the last couple of days here, as we've been in our staff retreat, kind of revisiting 2024 and talking about 2025. I would say that, it is a privilege in many ways, right, to do this work, because it's a mission to save people's lives, right, and it's a mission to try to find ways to do that. It can impact you, right? I mean, as I tell our staff, our mission and our purpose is focused on suicide and suicide prevention. There's not anything else that we do, right? I mean, so it's there every single day that we come to work, and everything that we do, and while every single day we may not interact directly with a suicide loss survivor, while every day we may not deal with suicide in the same way that somebody who may be a first responder or something like that deals with it, but you do have to realize that this impacts real people's lives, and there are times when each of us that are involved with this, who have been impacted either very, very directly or indirectly, you do have to take a step back, right? You got to protect your own mental health. You got to protect your own capacity to grieve. You've got to protect your own capacity to reflect and to heal, and to mourn. So anybody who can tell you that they can compartmentalize all of this, in a way successfully that it becomes distant, right? I don't think they're telling you the truth. I think that may be a coping mechanism, right? That may be how they try to deal with it. But, this is a difficult, complex issue to talk about with people, even today, where we think that we've helped to eliminate a lot of the stigma, and we certainly have. But there is still stigma out there, right? There are still things that suicide loss survivors deal with, that they deal with people's perceptions of suicide. They deal with the guilt that's attached to it. And there's still that sense of, responsibility, blame, and things like that. So, I think the way you deal with it is you just got to talk about it. You got to be candid with one another, and you got to also be willing to accept that there are folks still that just shrink from the conversation, right? That just simply aren't comfortable with it. One of the things we talk about a lot in our work is that the best step to suicide prevention is talking about it, right? Being able to go talk to somebody that you love, that you care for, that you may be a coworker, maybe a family member, maybe a neighbor, could be a spouse, could be a son, could be a daughter, right? Brother or sister, whatever it is. People need to understand, people need to learn that we have to be able to go to people that we care about and just ask them the question. Are you thinking about suicide? Are you thinking about killing yourself? I mean, and that's not an easy conversation for anybody, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
No.
how much you may care for somebody, or you may love somebody, or you're maybe concerned about, that's a tough conversation to have with somebody.
Yeah.
Our job as an organization is to help teach people how to have that conversation.
Okay.
And then once you start that conversation, if somebody tells you yes, what do you do with that information, right? How do you get them help and support, right? One of the things I'm going to put in the chat here, give me 1 second.
Okay. Yes, sir.
We have a free online program that we call One Step Ahead.
Okay.
And let me find it here. Where did it go? That I'm going to share, that your folks that are watching this can go online, and it's a 40-minute online training. Okay. I'm just going to put it right there in the chat, called One Step Ahead. And on that online training, you log in, you sign up, and you learn the basics of how you can be what we call a gatekeeper, right? Somebody who can help somebody who may be finding themselves dealing with suicide. How do we help ask the question, right? How do you teach somebody to listen when you've asked them the question? How do you respond to that, in terms of how do you respond to get them to where they need to go to get help? And then how do you follow up, right? How do you make sure that you continue to stay in touch with that individual? And so I think one of the ways that we deal with the enormity of the emotion that comes with suicide is by making sure that every single day we talk out loud about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow. And I guess I wanted to probably ask you, how do you feel that, whenever you go, at least for me, when I go into new positions, take on new roles and that kind of stuff, I usually learn something about myself that I didn't know about myself beforehand. If it's okay to ask, I mean, now that you've been working with SAVE for a good while, what would you say you've learned about yourself?
That's a great question. What have I learned about myself? One of the things I always learned, Mia and Todd, is just how much more I have to learn about everything, right? So one of the things I think I'm really good at is knowing what I don't know. Unfortunately, there's so much of what I don't know. It seems like that's all I spend my time doing, is trying to figure out what it is I need to learn. So I don't know that I could. So I don't know that I've learned anything more about myself. I will tell you that I think I've learned a lot more about the subject matter, certainly. Okay. I will tell you that I come from a background, so before I became the CEO of SAVE, again, I led 2 other nonprofits, but before that I spent 30 some years in local, state, national government, politics, and public policy. So I come from a background where I've learned to ask questions. I've learned to not take at face value what somebody tells me, especially when they tell me, well, this is the way we've always done it. I've learned to challenge conventional wisdom. I've learned to be disruptive when I believe that I need to be disruptive. And what I mean by that is not walk into a room and start yelling and screaming, but be willing to challenge the status quo, be willing to say to people, yeah, I know this is how you've always done it, or this is how we've always done it, but if we're not seeing any change in what it is we're trying to address, maybe we need to think about doing something different, or maybe we need to admit that what we're doing isn't maybe doing it well enough, or so I think what I've learned in this subject matter space is that, it's interesting. Let me back up. It's interesting. So a couple of weeks ago, I did a live stream with a couple of researchers, Chris Drapeau and John McIntosh, who are both PhDs, who did an extensive study on the last 90 years of suicide data here in the United States. And it's fascinating in that some of the lowest rates and numbers of suicide in this country occurred at times when the country was at great upheaval, right, and great conflict, and yet did not have the kind of resources that we have available today to talk about suicide and prevent suicide. So there were times in the last 90 years when suicide rates were lower, even though there wasn't any protective factors out there, such as SAVE or your foundation or other groups out there fighting against suicide, right? I think we need to pay attention to that. And I think we have to be prepared to ask very tough questions, which is, even though we're spending a lot of time and money and resources on suicide prevention, we're still seeing the numbers go up. I don't think we can ignore that reality. And I don't think we can simply dismiss it by saying, well, if we didn't exist, the numbers would be even worse, right? We don't know that, right? We may feel that, we may make that argument, but we don't know that that's true, okay? Now, does that mean we should immediately stop what we're doing and saying, until we figure this out, we shouldn't do anything more? Absolutely not, right? Because even every single day, I think everything that we're all doing is saving one life, right? Which if it's one life alone, it's well worth what we're doing, right? But I do think we've got to be willing to ask tough questions. I think we've got to be willing to challenge conventional wisdom. I think we've got to be willing to say, maybe this isn't working, right? Maybe we need to try something else. Maybe we need to try something that is unconventional. Maybe we need to take an approach that people aren't comfortable with, and something where there isn't any research to prove that it's going to work. Because I will tell you, there's an awful lot in the suicide prevention space where there is not evidence that something is clearly making an impact. We do it because we believe it is, because it seems like it would make sense that we should do it, right? So I think we all have to be willing, if we're going to work in this space, we've got to be willing to take some risks. We got to be willing to challenge the status quo. We got to be willing to be disruptive.
Yeah.
And I think for me, what I've learned in this space is that there needs to be more people being willing to do that. Maybe that's what I've learned.
Yeah. No, that's really good how you put that, because I never saw it. I never saw myself that way. But yeah, I think what I like what you said is about being disruptive when you need to, especially when it's that status quo stuff. Because my day job, I work for the government, and I hear that like 99% of the time. I'm like, okay, but we still don't have the report we're looking for, and we're still trying to do it the same way. So, that's already not productive. You haven't produced the report. You've been trying for a year or two. That doesn't work. So let's change some things up. And so I like that. And I think, like you said, it's when I didn't do it in the military, I did it when I was a Boy Scout, but they had that survival training. They just put you out there. You got a knife and matches and all that kind of stuff. And then you have to survive, depending on whatever comes at you. And that's what it feels like with this nonprofit space. Okay, it's we have a funding issue today, and then tomorrow, okay, are we going to be here at either this rally or be at this event? Are we going to speak at this community event? And you have to weigh it based on and try to look at the impacts too. You try to get to everything, but if you can't, and then if you have enough people, maybe you can send a rep to that, and then somebody else, you can kind of break it down that way. But I know, at least for me, I'm learning a little bit more about that, kind of the span and control, but then also not letting yourself grow past what you have enough support to manage. Because we've received so much stuff, and it's like, we don't have the ability to do that. And then also, again, the question of impact. If we do that, will that take away from what we have done, or will it amplify the things that we want amplified? The kind of our main cause, or is it taking us away from our main cause, like you were just alluding to? But
yeah,
that's really good.
I think we talked about this when we first chatted, and we talk about that here a lot, which is, the issue of what it is you can do and what it is you can do well, is something we talk about a lot, right? So when we talk about things like how do we help support the LGBTQ plus community, right? Well, the Trevor Project that's out there is doing incredible work and leading the way in that space, right? We don't need to create a program that already exists at the Trevor Project, right? We don't need to do something that just replicates what they're already doing. What we should be doing is amplifying their work, right? Is making their resources available to people that are reaching out to us who need those resources, right? We don't have to duplicate what they're doing or duplicate what anybody else is doing. What we should be doing is amplifying their work, making sure people are aware of it. And if we do that, then I think we're doing the part that we're supposed to be doing, which is trying to work collaboratively and partnering with people, right?
Right.
And that helps address bandwidth issues, right? Which is, we can't be everything to everyone, nor should we try to be, because if we try to do that, we're not going to be particularly good for anyone, right? So I think if we can do those things that we do and do them well, where if there are gaps where we can step in and try to help fill those gaps, I think that's great. But where there's other people and other organizations doing work that is really good and really impactful, we should be there helping to support that and amplify it, making sure that other people are aware of it.
No, that's really good. And I guess unless Mia has another question after this, but I just wanted to ask, what did you have anything that you wanted to share with us that might be upcoming that you would want our viewers or listeners to know about, or keep a look?
I will say this, is I'm going to reach out to you guys offline about something we're looking at launching here in the next week or two. But, it kind of similar to this issue related to the Attorney General's comments about warning labels on social media. We obviously, next week on Wednesday, I'm facilitating a panel conversation here in Minneapolis at the International Association for Suicide Prevention. It's going to be a panel conversation on big tech and the impact and harms social media on youth. We've got Taylor Lai, who's with the American Young Persons Conference, who we're bringing in from California. We've got a young man by the name of Jose Perez, who's with an organization called Good Trouble. We have Shama Tolbert and her daughter, Shamail. Shamail was abducted after interacting with somebody online and sex trafficked. And they're going to be a part of this panel conversation where they're going to talk about, here are the real world harms that kids are experiencing. And this is why we need things like the Kids Online Safety Act, right? These things don't exist in a vacuum, right? This isn't just people saying, well, let's pass this law because we want to pass this law. This is real life things that are happening to kids out in the world, right? And so, we're going to keep, I think tomorrow evening, I think I'm I don't know how many people that are going to be doing a phone bank where we're going to be reaching out to Speaker Johnson and encouraging his constituents to reach out to him and ask him to get the kids' online safety bill through the House. And, so I think what I would encourage anybody who feels as though that they want to figure out how to make a difference in any of this stuff is, reach out to you, right? Reach out to your organization, reach out to SAVE, reach out to the Trevor Project, reach out to, JED Foundation or any of these groups that are out there doing important work, and and volunteer, get involved, right? Reach out to your elected officials. Ask them, what are you doing to make social media safer for kids, right? What are you doing to help support funding to make sure that we're making mental health services available to everybody who needs them? So there's, we're not powerless in this battle, right? We can all use our voice. We can all use our life experience. We can all use something we're capable of doing, which is to organize and to call on people to act. And they can make a difference. There's no question about that. I will tell you that I'm a firm believer that, every single one of us has a voice. Every one of us has the ability to be heard and make an impact. So sitting in the corner with sackcloth and ashes and wringing your hands and saying, I don't know what to do, you do.
Yeah. Wow. I think that was just wonderful that you said, because that's I feel that, but sometimes you might have it in your heart, but you may not be as eloquent, able to kind of put it out there and say it, in front of people and stuff. So, but yeah, I think what I heard, what you were saying, you were talking about the partnerships and seeing where you can amplify other, if it's not your main space, you can still be involved. You can participate, like the phone banks and in the panel discussions, which, I know you said we'll talk about it offline and stuff, but yeah, please do. Because I always like to hear what the young people are saying. Probably, and it's probably the same for you, because we just learn a lot from the youth, what they're experiencing, what they want to see, how we could, help them better, because they might say, well, you were doing this, but if you just did that, this would just be so much better for us. And really that's why we are having this podcast, Erich, is, we want to have it. And sometimes people find us, they'll look at the podcast later after it's up. They may not see when it's live and stuff, and they'll come back later and say, oh, wow, I heard that. And I got something from it. And, and then, they'll reach out whichever directions that they want. And I think this is a way for us to give back, that after we had a appropriate time of grieving for Matthew, at least that initial part, we had individuals that reached out to us and guided us to, hey, maybe it was this, was it, look at these things. And then we were able to kind of form our next plans. And we were so thankful for that we wanted to continue to give back. And then also parents even when we're at the Starbucks, the parents, because we usually give flyers out at our local Starbucks, sell T-shirts and those kind of things, our foundation T-shirts. But every time it's the parents are like, oh, I didn't know. We're like, man, how did you not know? I mean, national TV coverage, documentaries and just anything that you could think of. And like you said, you're still only hitting a segment of the population. So we don't feel, we're good at whichever level, at the media level, or even just handing things out. And then sometimes we just sit at the coffee shop and just start up a conversation. What do you guys think about that? What do you think about online child safety? Like, what's that mean? And then we talk with them. And then the moment you say it to them, everybody says that we have to do something. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like without fail. So I don't want to, I'm appreciative of you coming on. And Mia, did you have any other questions for Eric?
I did, but we know to go to www.save.org. Is that the
Go to save.org and you can learn more about the work that we're doing and right there, and obviously to your foundation as well. And we've talked a lot about, it takes a village, right, to raise a kid. Reality is it's going to take a village to protect them too. And I think all of us have got to recognize that we got a dog in this hunt. Whether you have kids or don't have kids, the reality is that it's an obligation we all have to learn what we can do to protect kids while they're online. We all have the ability to save a life and prevent suicide. And again, I'd encourage people, if you go to Save, go to our One Step Ahead program, take that training. It's free. It'll take you 40 minutes. Pass that link on to other people, share it out. We want people to take that and learn how to have those tough conversations with people you care about suicide, and then how you can learn how to help them afterwards. And so, it's important just to keep talking and make sure that we're continuing to raise these issues, and make more people aware of what are the challenges that we're all facing and what we can do together to overcome them.
Wow. Well, Eric, thank you for being with us tonight. And we just look forward to just continuing to partner with your organization, and just let us know how we can help.
I appreciate it. And thank you both, Mia and Todd, for what you're doing and the fight that you're out there fighting. And you're making a difference every single day. You'll continue to make a difference, even though some days don't feel like it. You're raising your voice. You're being heard. You're raising awareness. The more people who learn about what is going on in the world and how they can play a role, every one of those is a victory.
Thank you.
Thank you.